Here.
Mr. Hoffman?
Here.
Mr. Bonchez?
Here.
Mrs. Hughes?
Here.
Mr. Reinhardt?
Here.
Mr. Sheets? Mr. Shubitz?
Here.
Mrs. Walleyes?
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. This is a very exciting night. It is a culmination of almost 2 years worth of investigation with the School Board Construction Committee, Mr. Mike Wagaman, Mrs. Alexa Eisenhart, Mr. Brian Hohenschelt, and Mr. Ken Hefner. This process has taken on many different iterations along the way, but we are really excited to be able to be representing and presenting a recommendation to the school board this evening. To do that, I thought it'd be a good opportunity just to set the stage, because it's been so long, do a presentation about the process to why we got here, to talk about the finances connected to the project, and really to hear from the experts here that are going to be our partners with this project, to talk about what we're going to be investing in for our school and our community. So with that being said, I'm going to turn over the presentation here. So these are our partners as we look to present this project to the school board and to our community. Mr. Lee DeFreitas, he is from Shaw Industries. Mr. John Reinhardt, he is from Schlau. And then Mr. Bugansky, who is from ATT Sports, who is going to be our track partner. They will be speaking later about the specific products and what is involved in the project. The School Board Construction Committee I'd introduced earlier, and again, I thank them for all their time, their commitment. They had countless hours taken out over the last 2 years of their workday, because most of the meetings happen during the daytime, to be part of this and get us to this recommendation. And then those administration staff that were part of this process as well, you can see there. Again, the format for tonight, we'd like to talk a little bit about the background of how we got here, talk about the finances, and then go through the actual quality products that we're going to be installing here. So with that being said, this project is part of a broader project. So the long-term facility enhancements started back in 2019. We started doing some work over at the high school with a high school roof replacement. We did some upgrades to the high school office. Phase 2 was really doing a full upgrade to the high school, to the elementary school. We put a renovation in, we put the new library in, the new gym, new classrooms, new STEM room, new music room. Then we shifted to this building, and that is what gave us this space here. Really developed and evaluated all the common spaces, the hallways, the auditorium, this library area. And then now the fourth phase is to evaluate that outdoor stadium space at first originally was the intermediate middle school, and transitioned over to the high school. So you can see the date on that. That was originally intended to be back in 2022. Again, this is a 2-year process to get to where we are now. Part of that was the finances connected to that. So we took $17 million out over 3 loans. You can see the interest rates that we got back at that point: 2%, 1.4, 1.6. Probably should have invested in, did a lot more back then, knowing the economy of where we are now. You can't touch something like that anymore, obviously, but we secured ourselves and put ourselves in a phenomenal financial position. That loan will be paid off in 2031, 32. And Ms. Delguerico is going to talk about that in a little bit of time here. The district was originally intended to be debt-free in 2023. So basically, by extending the debt and keeping that same amount, it's almost like if you had a mortgage in your house and your mortgage is going to drop off. If you were paying, let's just make a number up, $1,000 a month, we just basically continued that flat mortgage payment, that $1,000 a month, for another 10 years. And that's what allowed us to be able to secure the $17 million. And it also allowed us to do all these projects without raising taxes, because we were able to keep that level funding. There was no additional taxes needed to raise and pay a higher amount of debt. So that's how we got to this and how we were able to get these projects done, and with no tax increase. This is a a data point for our athletic participation. And there's a lot of pieces that go into this. Mr. Tony Riggins is our new athletic director. So I'm going to turn the mic over to him to share a little bit about what this data means, but also what this project means for our athletic facilities and our athletic programs.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. This is a very exciting time for Brandywine Heights to be talking about an all-weather track and a turf field in our small town. This is going to bring a lot of attention, and this is going to bring quite a few benefits for our student athletes as well as the community as a whole. So what we're looking at here, if you're looking at this chart, we have 3 line graphs on here. The red one actually just depicts the overall enrollment for our students between grade 7 and 12, because that's when PIAA participation actually starts, is in 7th grade. All of our students have been working through the youth programs, and then when they get to 7th grade, they're able to participate in our athletics. The blue line there that you see is the number of students who have participated in all sports. The number that you're seeing on that blue line shows if one student participates in multiple sports throughout the year. So you have a multi-sport athlete who participates in something in the fall, winter, and spring. They're actually being counted 3 times according to on that line. What we're going to look at, what I want to highlight, are those last 3 years that you see on that gray line there. We've seen a remarkable increase over the past 3 years, starting in 2022 school year there. You see 271 individual student athletes participated in sports compared to the overall enrollment of that 650 on that red line. So that's 42% of our students participated in 2021-22. Then you move to the next year, it goes up to 48%, 307 compared to 646 students overall between grades 7 and 12. And then now, this most recent year, we've seen an increase up to 54% of student participation in athletics within our school district. 339 students as compared to 627 students. You can see that those lines are getting closer and closer together. So that's a positive thing. Involvement in athletics does a lot of things for our students. It enhances their academic performance. I always encourage students to do something else outside of the classroom, something else outside of school. Try to be involved. It exposes you to a number of different people, a number of different opportunities, and hopefully they bring those experiences in the classroom. So the overall academic performance will see an increase in. It fosters teamwork, it builds character, and it contributes to the overall development of all of our students. So the more students that we have participating in athletics, we're eventually going to see the impact, and we're going to see that impact in the classroom with those numbers going in the direction that we'd like to see them. Over the course of the night, you're going to hear gentlemen talking about the installation of an all-weather track and the installation of a turf field. The track and the turf field will impact 3 of our sports. It's going to impact track and field, obviously, with the track. It's going to impact our field hockey team, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, and it will also impact our boys and girls soccer teams. So our most recent track team had 79 student athletes participating between the middle school and the high school this year. That's a nice number of students for a school that doesn't have their own all-weather track. We've been doing a great job. Our coaches have been doing a great job bringing them in, nurturing their talents, building them up so they can participate not only in our dual meets, but then go beyond, and they're participating in leagues, and then they're participating in districts, and then they're going off the states. And so we've had some athletes participate at huge meets that are nationwide, like our New Balance national meets. So our track coaches have been doing exactly what they need to be doing, and this installation of this all-weather track is just going to continue to increase that participation. Our track team has been actually started as a co-op with Kutztown Area High School. If you remember that started with a co-op. Our numbers increased so much that we actually had to split into 2 separate teams, because we just started to outgrow it. So we had our own team. Our kiddos got to wear their own jersey, participate against Kutztown as opposed to with Kutztown, which has been phenomenal. In the coming years, sooner than later, BCIAA is going to eliminate tri-meets, which is exactly what we've been doing since we've been partnered with Kutztown, because it's been Kutztown, Brandywine, and then whatever team is coming on board or coming to us to participate, that makes a tri-meet. And they're going to do away with the tri-meet. So we need our own space, and it's crucial that we have our own space. Getting our own track is going to increase the quality of our athletes. It's going to show that we have a dedicated training facility. It's going to decrease the possibility of injury. We're focusing on safety and performance when it comes to all of our athletes. It's going to allow us to host more events. And once we start hosting more events throughout the community, it's going to build school spirit, and it's also going to build community engagement. The other sports that this project will impact, field hockey. We've talked a lot about field hockey. Everybody knows that. There are some passionate parents. There's some passionate coaches. They want us to know their kids are serious, and we want to be able to provide them with the best facilities possible. And one of those things is a turf field. We're putting our student athletes behind if we have them practicing and then competing on grass, because when they get to the college level, there's no grass. The game is much faster. There are skills that you need to learn on turf, and we can actually start that now here in our school. Right now, we are in a partnership with Kutztown Area High School. Kutztown University has been gracious enough to open up their facilities to us, and we will have 7 home games at Kutztown University. They are also providing their space for 2 practices per week. Saturdays and Sundays, we'll be able to practice at Kutztown University, so they'll give the girls more practice time on turf. And we have another facility that we're looking at that we're going to be going to during the week as well. It gives them an additional time, additional practice on turf. Hopefully we will see that when it transitions to game time. So for field hockey, it's going to enhance their skills. It's going to develop them into players that they want to be. This also holds true for soccer. Our boys and girls soccer team will have the opportunity to participate, to compete, to practice on a turf field. Because again, once you transition to that college level, you're going to see a lot of turf, and the game is completely different. If anybody has kiddos that have played soccer, you start when they're this big and they're on grass. And if they go if they go beyond that and they're middle school or high school and they're on turf, the game is completely different. And we are doing our students a disservice if we don't give them the opportunity to participate and practice and compete on turf. Again, it increases their skill set. It gives them a consistent surface to play on. There's less risk of injury. A ball having an odd bounce into your face, or a soccer ball or a hockey ball. Also, the benefit to the community. We can use this surface year round. We can use that turf field year round. And it will bring valuable just community spirit and engagement to everyone if we do move forward with this project. So with all that being said, I really do appreciate everybody taking the time. I know it's been a long haul. I know that the board members have put a lot of time and effort into making sure that they're making the best possible decision for our student athletes as well as the community. And I just want to thank you for your consideration for moving forward with the installation of this overall project. Thank you.
So as we transition here, just some information on how we got here from a background perspective. Again, I mentioned this is like 2-year almost project process. We started in September 2022. The board had met with another firm, and we started investigating putting a turf field and a track at this facility. This was kind of the hub of the community. People drive by. It seemed to be the ideal location. So we investigated that. A lot of people have heard this already, but just to get level playing field. The reason we couldn't do that was because of that dashed line. There is something called a riparian buff, and we had to stay 150 feet away from Toad Creek. Toad Creek is considered a high quality stream. And as such, we weren't allowed to do any construction within that 150 feet. So that put us out to that line, which, as you can see there, would have been very hard to build 3/4 of a track. So shifted us to go over to the high school. And that's really honestly when things started falling apart. We had really good momentum. We were moving in the right direction. Things were a lot of time invested in this facility. We shifted the high school and things kind of fell apart. So the board committee that was involved in this took a step back and said, okay, let's recalibrate here. And we ended up partnering with Arcterra. They are a firm that builds athletic fields, everything from professional fields to high school fields. The owner of Arcterra lives in the school district, David Horn. And so it ended up being a beautiful match to be able to work together on this. The board approved that contract with David in May 1st. And since that point on, we started the planning process. So the summer, the fall of last year, we kind of worked through defining and refining what that project was going to look like, with what our needs were from the community, with what our needs were from our coaches, and then also financially what we were able to afford. So we kind of got to that point by the end of the fall, November, and then we started through the permitting process. And so that began a process with the local township. It began a process with DEP, and that process was a pretty lengthy process. So this is all the DEP connections to that. So you can see there, December 14th, we submitted the permit. We did not get the final permit until June 10th. We were hoping to be able to have that permit late spring, worst case scenario. And then the idea was we were going to start construction actually on that June 10th, ironically, the date we finally did receive the DEP permit. Through that process, they I don't want to use the reject, but had turned the application back over to us for what they called technical deficiencies. And we had to resubmit the application to them on a few occasions. So that, again, delayed the process into where we wanted to be with the project. We went to formal bid for the project February 22nd to April 25th. The bids were released, and then we received all the quotes at that April 25th date. The quotes that came back, unfortunately, were higher than what the board had originally budgeted for. So it put us in a little bit of a tailspin. We started recalibrating the project, started looking at what we were able to afford, and rescoped the project, and we're still ready to move forward. We redefined a project that still met the needs of everybody, still came out with a beautiful space. This was all for a grass field, and we were ready to move forward. The DEP permits delay continued to come, and we started to get nervous because at one point they said if there's one more submission back to us, a technical deficiency, that our entire permit was going to be thrown out and we're going to have to start the process all over again. So that really put a major red flag up. And that really, from our perspective as a committee, started us to ask the question. So if our prices are high, if we already have a delay and we can't get the project started when we wanted to, how far off are we really from putting a turf field in, which is what we had originally wanted to do, and then ended up shifting and altering because of price and what we were able to afford. And so that exploration, we interviewed several companies, 3 companies to be exact. Well, four companies interviewed 3. And when we got down to the very end of it, we're recommending a partnership with Shaw Sports Turf and Schlau. Schlau, ironically, was the lowest bidder for the grass field. So we're able to work with them to be able to adjust that contract and be able to move forward with a turf field by that partnership with Shaw. So it ended up being a really nice blend. When we got to the final numbers, ballpark, we were about $400,000 more to put a turf field in. Originally, all the estimates were $800,000 to $1 million. And that's about where the other companies came in, $800,000 to $1 million more to put a turf field in versus your traditional full stadium project with a grass field. That was the estimates from several different sources. Our architect that worked through this said the same thing. But when we got down to it, ultimately, it was that delta was a lot closer. So that's really what allowed us to move forward with this and have this great relationship. So what's included in this project? This project has a 6-lane track, an 8-lane sprinting section. So you can see here from this image, this is the sprinting section here. So when you do track, a lot of your sprints start here and go down. or they'll start out here and come around. Sprint events have the highest density or the highest interest from students. So the more capacity we can build in the track, the more we can get kids through to help speed up the track event. So that's why we're looking to do an 8-lane for the sprint sections versus your long distance. Sometimes they stay in the lanes. In some events, they don't even have to stay in the lanes. So you can get away with a 6-lane for the other portion of the majority of the track. That helps to curb some cost and make it fit with what our needs are. Mr. Riggins spoke to the participation and the tri-meet pieces. The other piece you'll see here is there's a walking path around the track. That'll allow spectators to be able to move around it. It'll allow community to be able to walk around it when there's an event or when there's not an event. We also intend to open up the gates to allow this to be a community space when it's not in use for our students. So the lights that we're going to be installing are dimmable so that we can, similar to what we do out here on this field, dim those lights and have it at a lower level, so not wasting electricity, but also have it be a community space for people to use. There's also things for throwing events. We need that for the track program. There's some softball improvements to this project, and I'll show you that in a second. Of course, we've been talking about the turf field. LED lights are going to be installed. Right now, there are no lights at the high school field. So we have to invest in the electric to go there. We have to invest in the pillars. We have to invest in the actual LED lights. A new scoreboard, a new sound system, and then a patio area extended in front of the snack stand. So this is the layout of an aerial view of the high school. This is the boundary of the high school right here. This is what it looks like with the use of the space. So this will be the field. We're going to put the throwing events in this section here, discus, javelin. And then these are the improvements to the softball. Right now, softball does not have a home run fence. We stick up a temporary fence. We're looking to put a permanent home run fence in with a warning track. And then also some improvements over here for the visitor section for pitching. So those pieces are included in this. Right now, this is a practice field that we're going to take and make into these throwing events. But in this, when track is not occurring in the fall, this will return back to a practice field to help to alleviate some field usage space here. Some other before and after pictures here. Again, this is that aerial view, but you can see what the before is now, a cinder track with the concrete slab here, which is originally intended for like a high jump or a pole vaulting. And you switch it over and it goes into more of this image. Some more before and after images here. I mentioned earlier there's going to be an addition made out here for the snack stand. This is where the snack stand is. And the beauty of this is that there's inside access to that as well as an outside access. Right now, it's hard to see, but this drops off and you can see grass right there. It's an awkward drop off of about 4 or 5 feet, not really usable. So we're looking to extend the bleachers, bring it over, and then have a seating area for picnic benches. So as people go to the snack stand, they can go out, have a seating area. This is also the main path to get to the stadium. We're going to bring individuals through the high school. There's really not great areas the other way. If you come to the one side, you're going to end up interfering with what is at now the softball and the throwing events. If you go the other way, we're going to be bringing them kind of the back door where the dumpsters are. And so the main access seems to make sense. We bring people in through this access for basketball now. It's literally another 30 feet down to get to this door. So it's what we're commonly using for all our sporting events anyways. We're going to continue that path. And this is going to be the view walking out. You're going to walk out. You're going to see this nice new seating area. You're going to see the field. It's going to give a very nice open, here's our new facility look. Some images of what a shot put, what a javelin runway is going to be. It'll have a track surface runway for the javelin, the warning track for softball, an image of what that's going to look like. Our scoreboard, the scoreboard recommended is a digital scoreboard. So it'll allow us to put the times up for track. It'll allow us to show movies for the community. So we can have community nights and use the turf field to have families come. I foresee us doing something like Friday night or Thursday night movie nights in the summer. So we can do and really use this space, not just for athletics, but to make it a community hub, which is really the goal here. We're also, as I mentioned earlier, going to be putting the lights in. This is just an image of what it was. This is an image from 1977. It's a good eye test to see if I can read these years. And this is an image for 2015 or 18 of what that looks like. You can see the cutoff. It's amazing what they're able to control with LED lights. And the recommendation is to go with LEDs that are made to create an image of full light for night events, but also that dimming capability for our community. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ms. Del Guerrico. Ms. Del Guerrico is our business manager. She's been involved in this project all along. She's been involved in all the meetings, but she also is obviously heavily in tune with the finances. So there's two parts of this. What are the project costs? And then how do we afford this? And that's the big question of, okay, this costs a lot. How do we afford this as a community? So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Del Guerrico.
Good evening, everyone. So shifting from the actual material side to the project cost finances, the part that might be exciting for some, not some for others, but the project costs. So on the next slide, you're going to see the total project breakdown of, you'll see the general construction. So when we went out to bid, we had basically three contractors. We had electrical, plumbing, and general construction. You'll see the plumbing's not up there, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So the general construction will be managed by Schlau at a cost of a little over $2.37 million. They will essentially be what we call the lead contractor in this project. And then transitioning to the artificial turf piece, when we made the change from natural grass, you'll see that we thought it would be in the best interest to bring on another contractor. So you're going to see there we have Shaw Sports Turf. The total cost will be about $381,000, and they will really work hand in hand with Schlau throughout this project. And they both will present in a little bit. So then moving on back to the RFP part, we'll get to the electrical contractor. We will keep this in the project. And that the lowest bid went out to Ace Electric, so they will do their part for about $195,000. And that amount was essentially when they take out two of the alternate bids that we're not moving forward with. And then last two is not part of the RFP process, but we got it through cooperative purchasing. As Mr. Pottinger said, there will be lights with this, so we'll be going with Musco Lighting. For $329,000. That was actually cheaper than what was essentially part of that electrical bid that we chose not to move forward with. And then last but not least, the main component of the project would be Nevco. That is essentially an all-in cost of $199,000. That gives you that video display board, 25-year warranty, and installation and shipping. So altogether, you add those up, and we come up with about $3.484 million. So then kind of that's what it costs. And then we got to talk about how we're going to pay for this project. So the primary funding will be existing bonds, and the rest will be picked up by capital reserve. And then bonds, or as you and I would call it, loans, like an auto loan or a mortgage, are monies that exist outside our general fund. Our general fund is really that big fund that we do our day-to-day operations out of as a school district. So the bond proceeds essentially are in like a separate bucket. We call it the construction fund. This structure of debt allows us to keep these essentially flat payments year to year, ensuring that we have a stable financial approach. And then in addition, these bonds also, there's some requirements on what we can use them for and also requirements on what we cannot use them for. So basically, we're not paying our electrical bill with bond money. But we can use it for larger, probably like once every 30-year projects, construction projects. And that's what essentially we intended to use it for when we started that 4-phase project that Mr. Pottinger had talked about. And then the one part I do want to, you actually see it on the next slide, is the affordability piece. You'll see it in bold and underlined to the right. So there will be no tax increase with this project. I know that's a concern for some within the community. We do want to emphasize that really this is a totally separate revenue stream and construction fund. So when you see people throughout the community and if they have questions, just say, this has nothing to do with your taxes. And then total, you can see at the top is the total project cost is 3.4 million. That bucket of money, that construction bond money, is about 2.2 million, which leaves us with, after we spent all that money, about $1.2 million that we have to pay for. And that will be covered by the capital reserve fund. So our capital reserve fund essentially has a current balance of about 2.8 million. So once we pay the 1.2, we'll get almost 1.6 million remaining. And you'll see it through budget meetings. We talk about how we fund this capital reserve. But by doing it with this approach, we'll essentially ensure that we have a healthy capital reserve fund while we can still make our kind of smaller capital improvements from year to year that we budget for. Okay. And then last but not least, I do want to talk about not so much the cost of the project, but also the potential for the revenue side of the project. Obviously, we're going to have a turf field put in, and for those who don't know, they can be a revenue generator. And within our community, we have a lot of youth sports within our community. We have a lot of competitive soccer teams within a relatively small radius of this district. We have lacrosse, we have field hockey, soccer. We have a lot of teams for various sports that they're always looking for turf time. So essentially, we would have the opportunity for them to rent our facilities. Whereas when we were with the natural grass field, we were concerned if we had the opportunity for our youth programs to use the field, because we were limiting field usage based on we wanted to keep the field healthy. We don't want the grass to die. So essentially now it's almost a flip model where we'll want to use it as much as possible, and we can use it as much as possible. And then we'll have the lighting. So I think with Long Swamp, I think we'll be able to have it till 10 p.m. We could have the lights on. So basically sun up till 10 p.m. People could be on the track basically year round, weather dependent. So basically from my lens as a business administrator looking at the finance side, turf would be the most fiscally responsible approach at this point, just because the cost of the natural grass was so high, because we'll have that increased usability, reduced maintenance costs. So really our return on investment is actually greater by going with a turf field. And we can keep the field in optimal condition year round. So. And then shifting over back to the product itself, I'm going to introduce Lee DeFreitas. He's the territory manager at Shaw Sports.
Do I have slides here? I don't think I have any.
No, you can have this.
Oh, got this stuff over here. Well, good evening. Thanks for having me. And as introduced, Lee DeFreitas with Shaw. I'm 36 years in the turf business, but what an exciting time, and not only for athletics, but I've heard Community Hub mentions of several times. PE classes, it truly will become a focal point, as I find in most cases like this. So Shaw is part of, just to give you a little overview of who we are, and then I'll get into a couple very short technical parts of the product that you've selected. Shaw is part of what I always call Big Shaw. Probably see our trucks once in a while. I don't know about these roads out here, but they do roll around a lot of places. Shaw Industries, world's largest carpet company, and so now hopefully you'll all go out and next day you'll see a Shaw truck roll by, because there's a ton of them out there. So why I mention that is we are we're a big stable company. this is a huge investment, and so you'll have a great financial partner, supporting, or financially sound partner supporting your investment. We're a Berkshire Hathaway company, so our warranty does transcend down, into Berkshire Hathaway. So we'll have folks make decisions based on the strength of our company. As I told the committee when I first met them, I mean, I think, we are an R&D company before we're a turf company, and we have a tremendous lab. It's nationally and even world renowned. And their task is to, not only come up with new innovation, but ensure that, every piece of this that shows up here will perform like, we say it will. First and foremost, safety wise, paramount is safety. We're putting something out here. We hope will last 8, 10, maybe 12 years, possibly, or longer. So safety's, first and foremost, and then also performance. And the challenge with these synthetic turfs is to getting it to perform very consistently over the years, even more so with what you're getting is what we call the infill system, which is the very popular system since the late 90s that closely mimics natural grass. And so, cutting to the chase here, that there's different, just like when you go and buy carpet for your home, there's different levels, different grades. You guys are selecting the top grade that we certainly have, and we think in the marketplace, and it's very heavy duty. We're big, heavy fiber guys, and we think your kids play on the fiber. And so what you're buying is a very stout product, just to use a few words that we describe it with. And again, it should last a very, very long time. Just to give you the makeup of the product, our brand name for this is called Legion. It's what we call a blended system. So just real quickly, I'm not going to get too technical, but in the turf world, there's two different fiber types. There's a fiber called slit film, and I'll pass this around. You'll be able to look at the slit film one. Here's one right on the edge, and when you pull it apart, it's got a lot of little fibrils. So it does a great job. So the makeup of these products is you take a fiber and it's called tufted construction. You're punching it in the backing, and then you lock it in with a coating on the back, and then you're going to fill it with a mix of rubber and sand that duplicates the dirt. And again, there's very strict regulations on shock absorbency and with our standing in the industry, anything we put down has to meet those standards for the full length of your warranty, and we'd expect it to perform, past that. But just to, so slit film is a wide blade. That's why I backed up about the infill. It does a great job of capturing that infill and keeping in the system. You guys have probably all watched sports on television, or even your own kids that are playing in this. They'll come home with the rubber and sand in their shoes, or you see the rooster tail. Well, that helps prevent that movement of the infill, and also the weight of it. So that's one type of fiber. There's also what's called monofilament. Let me back up. Slit film, very durable. Does it, like I said, great job of keeping the infill in, but it has a flat configuration. So as it ages, it wants to tip down and protect that infill. As it ages, and because it tips down, sports like soccer, especially at higher levels, tend to not like pure slit film fields because the ball characteristics change. So then we have the other half of this product. It's 50-50 is monofilament. Just looks like a blade of grass. It stands up. It imparts soccer type properties, and for all sports, and aesthetically under the lights, it is not as glaring as slit film. And so when we add that, so monofilament again has all those properties, but it's not as durable as slit film. So in heavy use, high school settings, multi-purpose settings, you want really the best of all worlds. So in 2011, Shaw innovated the product that you've selected, these blended fiber products. Ours is called Legion, where you mix the two together and you kind of have the best of all worlds. You have durability, so that slit film is in there holding the infill in place, but then you also have the mono that's going to stand up and provide the the grass-like properties. If you were building a pure, FIFA level soccer field, we'd say go mono. But you'd find that over time, your usage wouldn't be as great as combining the two. And it's and this system's at some pretty high level places, some Division I soccer and so forth. And most high schools now are putting in this type because you want to beat the heck out of it. And so you combine the two. So that's the blended product. So within this Legion product line, we have 4 levels actually, and it basically goes by weight and pile. So you have pile height for soccer, we do 2 inches, and then you have the weight of the product. Again, much like going to Home Depot or Lowe's or your carpet store, the tag, you'll see turf products from 30 ounces to over 50 ounces. And we think more is better. So you're buying the highest level of this blended product that we have. It's called Legion NXT, meaning the next, greatest version. And it's 2 inches, 50 ounces. And so, and if you research turf at all, that's pretty stout product. I mean, to put that much weight in 2-inch pile height. The other attribute of this is the monofiber. It, again, not to get too technical, but there's different thicknesses. So when you compare products, some folks don't dive that deep. And you can have a product and it looks the same, but you'll find out that the thickness of the fiber is not as thick as some others. So the mono portion of this, that half this product, that thickness of the fiber is, it ranges in our industry from 200 to 375 microns. This is 375. So yeah, it's an excellent system. It's got holes in the bottom. It's going to drain as much as John's base is going to allow it to. But, the turf itself is about 40 inches an hour, but combined with the base, I think our goal is 10, and they typically will drain much higher than that. So there's not going to be many times, if any, that your students and community can't be on this field. I mean, and you're not going to be postponing events and so forth. So any questions? Okay. Yeah. I'll start one either way. What I'm passing out is we call it a cut sheet. It's got just some technical jargon on there, but the weights and measures of what it's all about.
Are there other schools in Berks County where you've installed it?
I don't know Berks County that well.
Schuylkill Haven, right?
Schuylkill Haven. Southern Lehigh's not in Berks, right? Southern Lehigh. We're doing Reading right now. We're doing Muhlenberg. That's not a different county, but fairly close.
Muhlenberg's Berks.
Muhlenberg.
That's neighboring, but.
Yeah.
Muhlenberg's Berks.
That is, okay. Yeah, so.
You got a box?
The soccer ball?
Can we wait till the end of that question, if you don't mind? Sorry, we'll kind of keep it going, and I only like 4 more slides.
And you can be careful not to.
Go ahead, ask your question, because we're talking about it. Yeah, go ahead. It's probably better.
So I'm going to pass that
Well, it's
around.
fresher than mine,
That's a sample with the infill in it, but.
Lee, this is-
Yep.
I coached on both turf and, both types of fields. It's been a while since that dirt come to high school here. As far as injuries go, turf versus a grass field, have there been studies? I mean, I know turf versus turf and grass versus. I'm more concerned because high school girls especially are prone to knee and high ankle injuries. Has there been any studies done?
Yeah, I mean, the studies are pretty inconclusive for the most part. There's no more incidents of injuries on turf, and then you make the argument, and it was talked about earlier about the consistency and the which you don't have on natural grass. We always say, well, what kind of natural? I mean, to use it's a usage factor also. I mean, if you use it, a great natural grass field, we used to say 50, 60 good uses a year. And then you get a rainy Friday night or a rainy game and all bets are off. So all the studies show for the most part that at this level anyway, the incidence of injuries is probably less on synthetic just because of the consistency of it. And it's not maintenance free. There is some maintenance that needs to go along, which will enhance that. But, and we think buying a heavier weight turf will actually improve that. But, it's a little different. One more point about, when I started, everything was carpet style. It was the AstroTurf. And you could truly, and we still laugh about this. It's not really a laughing matter, but we would do with the NFL, we would do these tests and test all the shoes and give the report to the teams. Well, here's the shoes and here's these traction levels. And, the Nike Destroyer was one that, don't use that. Well, not only did they use it, they would tape it up and do all kinds of, because they wanted the highest traction levels. They didn't care what we had to say, but we needed to produce the data. But you could create Velcro on those style fields, and they still have them. Division I field hockey, for example, is mostly carpet style, and and all the D1s around here have them. It's really hard to raise traction levels on this style turf built properly with the right infill mix that plays into it. But you can't really do it. You could do it even increasing the shoe aggressiveness, so to speak. Real hard to create additional torque on these infill style fields. They kind of have a built-in release point that there's a little sand on the bottom and then the rubber on top. So the cleat really is designed to stand on top of the rubber, not get into on top of the sand, not get into the sand and release somewhat like a natural field, just have a breakaway. So. I am personally based out of New Jersey, but Shaw's in Georgia, where the carpet capital of the world, and that's where turf is. And it's all the turf. Our major competitors there. I think all the turf plants are there. It's sort of the textile. Did someone ask me that question at the last thing? I mean, if you want to hear it, I think Shaw has the original tufting machine, but back in whenever, they had woven carpets and things and weaving machines, and at some women were making chenille blankets and chenille rugs by hand. And and I don't know what year this is, but one of their husbands said there's got to be a better way to make those types of products. And so he developed this tufting machine where these women were needle by hand poking these needles into the backing, and then they came up with a tufting machine, and it was in Dalton, Calhoun, Georgia area. So that's why it's there. It's like, it makes no sense. It's not by a port. It's not an industrial area. It is an industrial area, tremendous now because of the carpet industry, but it's not what you'd normally think of an industrial area. So that's how it ended up there. Yeah. And just stayed there. I'm personally 36 myself. Yeah. So I started in 87 somewhere. Yeah, so industry standard is 8 years. Some are at 5. We're going to provide you guys with a 10-year warranty. So it's sort of like bumper to bumper. Over time, you're going to have you don't have a tremendous amount of lines, but you got soccer. Most of the straight lines will be in the panel, tufted in, so there's no cuts. But the curved lines and some of the hashes and things are cut in. So on a rare occasion, those might come loose. A corner may come loose. That's all on the warranty. When we do a 10-year warranty, shock absorbency, again, doesn't matter. You're not playing football. It's very important. So when we offer a 10-year warranty, we'll come out every year and inspect the field, and we'll do what they call a GMAX test to make sure it's the shock attenuation is proper. There's a government standard, and then there's a industry standard which we have to abide by. So. But yeah, you're going to be at 10 years, which is, a pretty substantial length of time to put something outside in our climate and then back it for all that time. So. What's that?
UV. You want to tell me about UV? That's one of the reasons that it doesn't last forever.
Well, yeah. Ultraviolet used to be, and still is probably people think of usage and holding events on it and graduations, but really the biggest killer of any textile and turf is UV. Good point. And so over the years, and again, some of you may remember the old AstroTurf days, watching at the vet or something. As the turf aged, it got kind of pukey green color. That was nylon, which doesn't have the UV stability. The product that's the fiber that's in these products is called polyethylene. So it's got great UV stability, but it's from the olefin family, so it's got a little laziness to it. Feels great, and that's why we like to bunch the fiber in there and support it. Nylon was very durable, but it just didn't hold its UV stability. So, that 10 years, I mean, we're gonna, whatever we put out there, we're gonna maintain the ultraviolet. There's a percentage in your warranty that that it's allowed to kind of fade a little bit, but it's not very much over a long period of time with polyethylenes. One other little thing, and we got some other speakers here, but one thing that we do different than others is we UV stabilize our backings. We're the only guys that do that. So most people think, well, you put the fiber in and then you cover it with infill and you don't need to stabilize the backing. But for repairs and just in case there are repairs are needed, we always leave you attic stock, a roll of turf, and it ends up behind the garage somewhere. And when the UV hits it, it breaks it down. So you pull it out to use it, it's not good. So we've gotten the practice of UV stabilizing our backing as well as the fiber itself. But UV is a big degrader of this. So again, when you think about putting out there for 10 years, it just tremendous longevity if designed and built properly. So.
Do you have an estimated time, like when the project will be totally done? If it would get approved?
I can only, yeah, I mean, yeah, the turf portion, it should be, we have one of our install partners sitting right over here, but I would say 2 weeks, 14 days, maybe, for something like this. Again, you got soccer, field hockey, you got some letters and a great logo. I mean, so, yeah, I had 2 weeks for the turf, but I think that's more under the GC for the total project duration.
What happens at the end of 10 years? So assuming lifespan, and you said average 8 to 12, let's say at, 10 and a half
Yeah.
years, you decide the field or we collectively
Right.
decide the field is past its useful life. What happens then?
So the great base that Schlough's going to build will stay intact. That'll outlive us all. So the turf gets cut and rolled up and taken off site. The base gets regraded and new turf would go down. So your investment on the base would far outlast. You're going to get some economies because that base will, for the most part, be there. Could be 2, could be 3 installations. I mean, of turf over the top of the existing base. To back up one step, though, this turf is filled with the rubber and the sand. At this point, there's no way to split it up on site. So we're doing many jobs where we take that out and bag it and reuse it. So we'll use this, and you want to recycle that material if possible. So in the current age, we have machines, the guys that remove this, that'll take the infill out, bag it on site, leave it there, and then the turf comes out with no infill, and we can use a small percentage of that infill in the new field. So you're gonna get some economies there. As far as the turf is concerned, that's a huge issue in our industry, is what happens to old fields. There's an article you probably read somewhere right around here. Some guy was dumping turf in fields thinking he was going to recycle it, build the plant, and it hasn't happened yet. But Shaw will now take that back. We actually take old turf, and there's been a limiting factor. The coating on the back where their samples are is urethane. Very difficult to recycle urethane along with the polyethylene fiber. Well, we're doing it now, making shock pad. So we'll take any field that goes in, we'll take back at our expense, actually the shipping expense. You just have the removal part of it, and then we'll take it back. So, to dump it in a landfill, today's dollar, if you can't get anybody to take it, $30,000, $40,000. So that goes away in the 10 years. That's the another benefit here that we're going to provide. But by the time you replace this, there's probably going to be equipment that'll allow you to divide the sand and the rubber on site and decide what you want to use, because we only will use a small portion because we still got to calibrate the safety for the new field. But if we could separate it and sand over here, rubber here right on site, we could monitor what goes back in and you could use a whole lot more of it. So my guess is by that time, there'll be equipment that's going to clean and there's plants that'll do it, but you got to ship the turf to them. They take the infill out, they separate it and then ship it back. By the time you do that, you know, you've kind of lost, you might save a few pennies, but my guess is that in 10 years time, that process will be right here on site when you remove a field. So.
The projects or installations have you done in partnership with this firm?
Wow, I mean, 10 over the years.
I'm gonna say maybe 10.
So you've worked consistently well together?
Yes. And we used to work together at one time doing things. So we go back a long way. So yeah, we got a lot of, what's the word? Synergy, I guess. Yeah. You know,
You're doing one right now, right?
yeah, we were doing three. We're going to be doing three, I think. Yeah.
Muhlenberg and Reading. To give you an idea, Reading High School, I put that field in 20 years ago. Shaw put the turf down, and we're just replacing it now. I wouldn't recommend using the field, but we don't have to redo the base.
Yeah.
They took the turf right off the base, regraded the base, and they're putting the turf down again right now.
Thank you. Forgive me, this is a dumb question. I apologize. Shoes. So earlier you were talking a whole bunch about footwear back in the day. Do athletes need unique shoes to be able to play on this field?
No, I mean, I think you saw that more in the carpet days where it was, what shoe felt comfortable. I played college soccer when we had, carpet style and, molded cleats just never felt right. So we would always use flat shoes. It's probably going to be some kind of a molded cleat that they might use on grass. It'll be similar on infill turf to natural grass. Some of the athletes may feel better with a multi-studded. Again, I used the term Beckenbauer shoe, probably showing my age, but that was a shoe that might work on this. But yeah, I'm thinking just the normal molded grass cleats. Some, I don't know if screw-ins possibly, but probably not needed on this. And the dynamic, the traction levels don't necessarily change all that much when it's wet. It did on the old days on the carpet style, but on this, you don't see a whole different change. The nature of polyethylene, it sheds water. So you're not, you don't see a big change. It's not like they're going to, have to run over at halftime. Oh, it's raining now. We got to change shoes. It's not like that.
You talked about UV rays and the potential impact. There's some buzz out there about how hot these surfaces get. Can you talk to us about how hot they actually get and at what point do they become unusable because they're simply dangerous? So turf, rubber sand fields or all turf fields, no doubt they do increase in heat. One way to, retard that is to buy heavy duty turf that it's more the rubber on top than it is the fiber itself. That'll help. But there's no magic bullet for heat. I mean, there's colored infills that help a little bit. Shaw did a study 5 or 6 years ago, and really the conclusion was that to really dramatically reduce heat, you need water. You need to cool it down, and you need something that holds water. I mean, I remember in college when we'd be out there on the turf, it'd be hot, and then it rained. They didn't wet it down in those days, and then it would be great for a while, but then all of a sudden, as the steam rose off the turf, it's like a humidity cloud, and it still happens today. So yeah, you can temporarily reduce heat, but the key to cooling is to get an infill that holds moisture. That's like a whole nother category of organic infills that hold moisture. Then you need a shock pad, so you're increasing the cost. Colored infills, there's a polymer that we have that you can spray on the field that attaches itself to the rubber and sand, and it still needs moisture. And in our climates, humidity or even rain today a little bit, that'd be enough to
charge this called HydroChill, and it holds the moisture. And then when it gets hot, it's like us drinking. Everybody's got a water here. You know, when you drink the water and you evaporate it out, it's evaporative cooling. So that's available. But in the northern climates, the time that it really you can get it to 120, 130 degrees, and the times that happens is so reduced compared to, say, the South. And I don't know, Tony, do you guys have to have a wet bulb kind of thing out there these days monitoring the turf? I know in New Jersey they're doing that. Yeah. So I mean, that's something that you may be mandated, that you have to measure the humidity and the heat and things like that. And then you just wouldn't go on it. I mean, but the times I find the discussion is the times during the day that it happens, or are so limited in our climate here that it gets to the point where you can't, kids can't be on the field. So I don't know if that really answered the question, but there are some solutions. I mean, we have coconut shell that will hold moisture, and you can topically apply that to the field. And I'm not a big advocate of putting stuff on top of the rubber. For one, it some of it doesn't work, but the coconut does work, even when it goes down into the rubber, because it holds moisture. The key is holding moisture in the system. So, but you have sand in there too. That's also will hold moisture and help cooling it. But yeah, there's no doubt on certain hot, dry days over a period of time, it can get hot, but it just needs to be monitored. But most high schools are doing that.
How much does the turf go up every year? Like on average, does it stay steady or every year it
Price?
goes up a little bit? Yeah.
It's stayed pretty consistent. It's, just when we start seeing, COVID, we saw a lot of a big jump, and it actually is. It kind of stayed there. It came down a tiny bit, but I think when you plot turf over the amount of years I've been doing this, first of all, the turfs today are less than when I started because they're different construction. Because the old days it was woven or carpet style, and the construction of these is just different, and it's more advanced too. I mean, the machines run faster and things like that. But I don't know. I think John, you've been bidding turf for years. I think it stayed pretty. It's creeped up a little, but not like a lot of things. And yeah,
Like everything else.
yeah. I mean, we always figure 3% a year, but it doesn't always seem to get there. But yeah, and let's put it this way: the minor cross increases we've seen haven't slowed down the number of fields that are going in. It's yeah. Anything else? We good? All right.
Thank you. Sure. So the second part of this project is obviously the track component. So I'm going to ask Mr. Bogonski to come out and share a little bit about what is involved in the track component of this project.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the next one, and then,
there's one
oh,
more if you
perfect.
wanna
There you go.
do
Gonna
that.
go, boom. Look at that. I'm Patrick Biansker with ATT Sports. We're a South Jersey-based running track installation company. We specialize in just doing running tracks. That's all we do. We've done a few hundred around the state of Pennsylvania since 2004 when we were formed. Just looking at Berks County, we did Berks Catholic, we did Fleetwood High School, but then we're also pretty advanced we did Franklin Field, Penn Relays, University of Pennsylvania. We installed that initially in 2015. We are resurfacing that as we speak. Well, we probably stopped a few hours ago, but we are resurfacing that track right now at Franklin Field. So the track system that you guys are going with, or potentially going with here, is what's called the Sandwich system. The specific brand name is the Recordtan M. It's manufactured by Advanced Polymer Technology, which is based out of just about an hour north of Pittsburgh in Harmony, Pennsylvania. The Sandwich system running track is far and away the most popular running track system that we install, or that really is installed by anybody in Pennsylvania, and then New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and pretty much throughout the Northeast. It is a 13 to 14 millimeter system. It is World Athletics certified. The basic construction of it is there is a paved black base mat, actually, the little guy right there. that's paved out with specialized paving equipment. It's a mixture of SBR recycled rubber and a polyurethane binder. We then seal it off to make it impermeable with a mixture of a fine dust rubber and a liquid polyurethane layer that goes on, it's kind of squeegeed on, that chokes it off and makes it impermeable. Then on top of that, we install a 5mm top, which is a poured in place polyurethane top. It's A and B components mixed together, and on site, you pour it out, we rake it to the specified thickness, and we broadcast the rubber granules on top. I'll actually pass this around. You guys want to take a look at that? After you broadcast all the rubber granules onto it, you let it cure, typically just overnight, and we sweep up all that excess, and that is what's left as your running track. It's then painted up for, you know, the lanes and the event markings and everything. It is typically something that lasts about 10 to 12 years, a little bit more, depending if, you know, it's not a, you're not going to be hosting state meets and, you know, 4 or 5 different conference meets every single year. It's not going to get the use that like a Franklin Field gets. So there, this is going to last at least 10 years, probably closer to 13, 14 years or so before it can just simply be resurfaced. We're going to add another wearing course. The red course that you see on this sample I'm passing around, we'll just add another one of them right on top of it. That's pretty much the only maintenance that you have to do with the track over the next 30 years. So our friends at Schlau, who we work with quite a few times, probably, you know, 5, 6, 7 projects a year that we work on together. We also work very closely with Lee and Shaw over the last 20 years. This next side. So this is, yeah, you're going to build your asphalt base. You're going to pave the black base mat that goes underneath of it. We then seal it off, and you see what they're doing on the edge right here. That's where they pour out the liquid polyurethane. They rake it to that specified thickness. And then, like I said, we would broadcast the rubber granules. It's virgin EPDM rubber granules that are broadcast into that mix. Cures, like I said, typically overnight. We sweep up the excess, and then we paint it, and that's your running track. Like I said, it's the sandwich system is far and away the most popular track system that we're installing in Pennsylvania. You know, most of the high schools that you're going to that have built a track in the last 10 or 15 years, that's what they're putting in. We're going to be doing this one in red. It's most UV stable color. It's also going to be the most cost effective color, which is why we ended up going with that as well. That's about it on the running track side. I believe next is Mr. Reinhardt here, but obviously if there's any questions about the running track, I'd be happy to answer them.
I got one.
Okay.
First picture, upper left.
Yes, sir.
Left side of lane 1, there's a black strip between what looks to be grass and the track.
Yes.
Is that a drainage facility, or is that just a black stripe in there?
No, that is an Akos channel drain. Yes.
Okay.
I don't know exactly where that's not my picture. So I know exactly where that is, but yes, that's designed to handle the drainage coming off of the track.
So is that,
This track will have the same.
that was gonna be
Okay.
the question. Is there drainage between the track and the field to handle the impervious coverage of the track, so you don't get?
Yes. And also the track is designed with up to a 2% slope. That way you in high school, it's up to a 2% slope. In college, it's up to a 1% slope. You don't want it to be flat because then you would have ponding and puddling issues with it. So you want it to be just a little bit pitched so that all that water runs off into the design drainage that we're going to be building here for you guys. All right. Thank you, guys.
Finally, I'd like to introduce John Reiner. He is from Schlau Incorporated. You probably have seen Schlau trucks driving around in Berks County, a big name in Berks County from a construction perspective. He has partnered with us. Again, he was very interested in the project originally with the grass, and so we're really excited to be partnering with him for the turf side. He is a wealth of knowledge and an expert. I was so impressed when we met with all 3 of these gentlemen. But he's going to talk to you a little about the construction. Mr. Reitnauer, to your question about permits and times, he'll go through that aspect as well.
Okay, thank you.
If you need to click it on, I don't know if there's
Okay.
I don't think there is.
Very good. Okay, as most of you know, the original project as designed was to have a natural turf field in the middle. Now, with the addition of the artificial turf in the middle, we have to redesign the drainage system because the turf now has to drain. So we have to go back to the conservation district. for what they call a major amendment to the permit and design the drainage system for the turf field. As to how long that's going to take, I don't know. To be honest with you, we had the same situation at Muhlenberg just recently. They originally designed it as an infiltration system. They had to go to an MRC basin, which is a containment system, and that took about a month to redesign. This might take a little bit longer. I really have no idea, and I wish I could tell you how long it's going to take. But we're going to do it in-house. We have our own in-house design team that can handle the situation. Good rapport with the conservation district, and we'll do the best we can. As far as the track goes, you had a question about the, oops, wrong way. About the drain. The drain goes around the inside of the track. And then the normal field drainage consists of usually a 12-inch pipe on both sides. And then that drains to the outside somewhere, either into a basin, or maybe it'll be held underneath here for a while, and it'll be monitored out on a system that'll only allow so much water to go out at a time based on the design. We also added the D zone, what we call a D zone here for paving. That'll be track surfaced, as well as your field events over here. This will be your long jump. This is your pole vault. And this area here will serve as your high jump area. The reason the original design had grass going around the inside, with the exception of this area right here, and a triangle or a rectangle at this area. But we find that over the years that these areas become more useful if they're in turf surface. In track surface, because the athletes can warm up on the track surface rather than on the grass. The artificial turf grass or the regular grass behind here really serves no purpose. So that'll also have to be taken into the design factor, the area of the D zone as well as the turf. I don't think I have anything. Anybody have any questions?
John, could you just explain a little bit about the MRC design?
Okay, yeah, the MRC basin. The MRC basin will probably be underneath the turf here somewhere. That'll be a depressed area that'll be filled with stone, and that will be monitored or metered to take so much water, and then as it fills up, the water is going to go out somewhere else by design. That's the way we're designing Muhlenberg right now. They originally had a basin in the middle, under the field, but because it was changed to an MRC basin versus an infiltration basin, we had to go deeper with more stone in the basin to monitor to handle the additional drainage. And that's basically the difference in the design. There's two different designs. One's an MRC basin and one's an infiltration basin. Because this is a karst area, okay, with prone to sinkholes, we will put a liner under this entire turf field and hold the water, keep the water from penetrating into the subgrade and causing sinkholes. Is there a guarantee? There is no guarantee, but at least by using a liner on the field, that will help to prevent any sinkholes.
If a sinkhole were to occur after the turf is down, what do we do?
The only thing you can do is cut open the turf, excavate, repair the sinkhole, and put the turf back. We did Penn State over at Berks probably, I'm going to say 10 years ago. And that they had two sinkholes that came underneath the turf field in that amount of time. There was no liner there. That was strictly like an infiltration system on the field itself. So that's why we put a liner under there, to try and prevent that.
Let me say this. After
2 years of listening to multiple companies talk about putting an artificial turf field in there. And I was a big proponent of being careful because of sinkholes. 2 weeks ago, when we met with Mr. Schlock, he's the first person that told us about a liner to do that, which gives me a lot of hope. It may not stop it, but it's gonna help it. So,
Thank you.
That changed my outlook considerably.
So when you cut, can I call it carpet, when you cut the turf, like, I don't know enough to know, is that an easy fix? You solve the sinkhole and then do you sew it back together, or is it now?
Most of the time,
or-
yeah, most of the time, I think they use scrim to put it, just glue it back together.
Yeah, if it was, we didn't talk about that, but most of the time we sew the seams, the main seams on these fields. But if we had to do that, we'd go back and yeah, you can cut it open and pull it back. I mean, and then you'd go back and glue it back together. And in theory, a glued seam is good or better than a sewn seam. It's just that, there's a volatility to it in the weather. So we typically like to sew the main seams, but yeah, there's no downside to going back with a glued seam. And with these infill products today, once you put it back and groom it back up, you almost never, typically, you don't see where you had to go in there, or very little chance that you'd see where you had to cut it. So you can, goes just like cutting grass or grooming grass back into place.
But it might be sage for us to have a little contingency set aside each year in the annual budget for that kind of unanticipated, hope it doesn't happen, but if it happens, we have to hire you to do that work, fix it.
That's correct,
So-
yes.
I
think
No, it is covered under the insurance.
Yes.
So-
that was the second question I had after I heard about what do we do if it does happen? This Federal Government already told us that we have insurance. There is a deductible, what have you, could find with that, but I think the overall cost would be worth making sure we have that. Any other questions?
Can I ask a bit? Are
Sir?
there any construction efforts made to help prevent sinkholes on the track running surface?
To be honest with you, no. That area is not going to be permeable anyway. So, but can a sinkhole occur under the track? Sure it can. It can.
Quick question on the field. How much room is between the corner and the drainage area? Like how many, I don't know who would answer.
Do you know that,
The
Lee?
turf, Like where your corner
Yeah, I mean,
is?
well, first of all, those lines can be put anywhere you want them, and you've got to meet a
Well, I
certain.
didn't know if that was to scale. or-
Well, I think the plan is to get the largest soccer field possible. I think when Arcatera designed this, if I'm not mistaken, it's only about 18 inches at the corner, because they wanted, it's 360 by 218, so it's pretty close to 360 by 225 is the largest soccer field you get. Some folks would say, well, that's more college level or whatever, but even the high schools today, they want as max as they can, with being, to me, more important, as a soccer guy, more important. So we had that discussion. I mean, that's something we'll probably have further discussions because we're going to have a little time. And that's really, up to your folks and your coaches and community. It's not unusual on a field surrounded by a track to have, corner kicks and things taken off the track or step. But the kids today, 18 inches, I mean, most of the kids today are taking a two-step or step and a half corner kick. So, from a safety standpoint, there's really no doubt. If you really want the max field, that's what you have. If the decision's made to kind of scale it down, you could either bring it in or you can go a little bit this way and, cut the length down from 360 and you can kind of get off that, I call it a pitch point or, right there and get off the edge and you'd be a little farther away. But
Yeah, in other words, if this point here is moved in, it becomes a little bit, you have a little bit more room.
Yeah, if you
No,
want.
I mean, I prefer the bigger field, I just didn't know if there was any sort of safety issue with the drainage, is that all flush with?
Yeah, that'll be all flush, yeah. And so, I mean, yeah, that's, again, we talked about maybe we have time to review that, or you folks will all review it, and then, and we just, those lines are permanent, so, you know, we're gonna put those in the turf, especially those straight lines come in the panels, so yeah, they'll lay it out how you guys decide and what size, but.
So, Craig, you might be better served at answering this, but if you're saying, oh, there's only 18 inches from corner white line to track service circuits, you know, edge, you're probably looking at 14, 15 to the edge of that ACO drain. If there's a kid taking a corner kick, they're going to plant that left-hand foot on that drain. And that's a metal cover. And I can't imagine that a cleat is going to hold fast in that metal drain. Is that a concern? It would. Okay. Okay.
There's an arc in the corner here. It goes like that. That's where the ball is actually kicked from. So you're actually picking more than 18 inches out.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, as I said, I'm not a soccer guy, so I thought you might, that would be my only concern.
That drain will probably be a plastic cover drain. It won't be a metal drain.
They are plastic now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the middle school now, they're stepping on the track to take on. So,
That's not uncommon.
I had a question. In my short tenure of really time here, there's been all the pothole, sinkhole prevention is great, but I have seen two happen in the last 5 years or so that's impacted field play on the field. So what would a time frame? Well, I know it might be impossible to ask depending on the size, but what would be a time frame there with that? Because then forbid something happened mid-season, are we looking at a week, 2 week? That could be 6-7 games just for the girls team, and then 6-7 games on top of that. Yeah, so I know it might be impossible to ask, but just do you have a guesstimate?
Naturally, it depends on the size of the sinkhole, okay? But it could be 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the size.
No, and that's fair, and that's what I kind of figured, but I mean, it's just something.
And Craig, the ones, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, the sinkholes that have appeared on the soccer field have been drain pipe related, as opposed to the ones that showed up on the tennis court.
Correct.
That's what I've been told, yes.
That's a main pipe
Yeah.
that's separating.
Oh, okay.
Causes.
Yeah, those drain pipes will not be used anymore with this turf field. Originally, if we were going to go with a natural turf field, those drain pipes were going to be repaired and reused. Now with the 12-inch collector pipe on both sides, we'll drain the track drain into those collector drains, and everything will be handled with that.
Question for you on the lines, someone mentioned lines, and again, I apologize if this is an ignorant question. So multiple sports will play on this field, soccer and field hockey. How do you handle 2 sports worth of lines?
Different colors, soccer being, assume white. If you had football usually is white, soccer's yellow, but here soccer gets the white or whatever color. I mean, white, and then we've got 30 different colors. I mean, sometimes it's kind of cool to use school colors. I mean, maybe gray for soccer and then your crimson or crimson maroon. I said that before for a field hockey, but that you could play with 2 sports. You can play around a little bit like that, but yeah, it's just different colors. The kids know their lines. Your students are playing on so many turf fields, some with 5 sports on them that it's not an issue. They just come out and play. They know their lines where they're supposed to be, and with just 2, it's going to be just a great, pristine looking field compared to many.
And once the lines go down, they're permanent, you said?
Yeah, it's colored turf. Yeah, it's not paint. It's actually.
We can save the cost of relining and the manpower or whatever it is of relining the field all.
Correct.
I don't say that brings up a really good point. Sorry.
But by the same token, you could, if you wanted to have a tournament, maybe
We talked about community use. Maybe a lot of these fields have 9 aside or 7 aside the other way. If you wanted to have a tournament, you could temporarily mark those. I don't want to put a can of worms, but there is that we talked about revenue, and you may have groups want to only rent half the field or have a tournament. You have in theory 2 fields, or if you incorporate your other fields in town, you can put temporary paint. There's paints now that come off in the day, aerosol paint and things like that. So you're not stuck with just those 2 sports. You can add lines. Lacrosse has been a huge growth in sport and looking for rental space and tournaments, and you could host a lacrosse camp out there, paint the lines or at least markings, and then they come off when they wear off for your high school sports. So
That's one thing that looked at this new thing that we got, additional lines.
they got the buy. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
That robot thing.
that's right. Yeah, I forgot you guys. Yeah, you guys would be set with that. I mean, that thing's amazing.
I have a question in regards to the turf. So in the first presentation, he mentioned that it was 2 inches in height. Is that from base to the top?
Yeah, so from the bottom of the back, yeah, so that sample there, that's 2-inch height, right there, and then that infill that goes in will fill that up to about 5/8 inches at the top. So you basically have 1.5 inches of the infill.
The reason I ask is purely asking from the field hockey standpoint. So turf, I'm under the assumption that 1 inch is the perfect playing surface turf-wise for field hockey. Regulations for PIAA state that the grass needs to be cut to 1.5 inches. So I'm just wondering if we're making that,
Well,
not
yeah,
for us to play.
Yeah, so the ideal hockey surface, obviously, and I sold many of the Division Ones that are out there over the years, it's a 1/2 inch. It's a 1/2 inch carpet on the pad, and very few, if any, high schools, have those. But in the infill turfs, yeah, it's.
So I'm just wondering if it makes up the difference once you fill it in.
Yeah, you'll be about a 1/2 inch, and you're gonna love it better as when it kind of settles in and it rains a little bit and compacts the infill, versus when it's brand new. But consistency compared to grass, I think you'll find a big increase there. But yeah, it's not that 2 inches. It's what's in that box.
That's what I was
Yeah.
trying to understand.
Right.
When you're holding this up, it looks quite long. but,
Yes.
Like I wanted to see.
Yeah.
Like it looks longer than my grass.
2 inches sounds like a lot, right? To
Yeah.
Get that.
I'm gonna make sure.
Go in with 0 turned over it.
Yeah, like I wanted to make sure we didn't need to cut it before it's
So one more question. You said there'll be a design change to the irrigation system,
To the drainage.
for the drainage system. How does that impact just one portion of the permitting, or does that impact like all permitting?
It impacts all permit.
So we're basically starting over with permitting.
It's called a major amendment to the permit. I have the original permit, and we're gonna amend it to accept the turf drainage.
But that affects like all of the different organizations that you needed to get permitting from.
I don't know if it's gonna have to go to DEP or not.
It's a major
Actually-
amendment, It absolutely will.
Pardon
It's
me?
a major amendment, it absolutely will.
I was under that impression too. However, over at Muhlenberg, when we changed from an infiltration to an MRC basin, that did not go to them, DEP. That was handled by the Conservation District, the local conservation. Really?
CCD
That
does
surprised me.
internally.
That surprised me.
That's extremely surprising.
Yeah. That's why I say I can't guarantee how long it's gonna take this. This might go to DEP.
Yeah, because you were mentioning, sorry, if you had more questions.
No, that's a good question right now.
If you estimate a month, give or take, to redesign the system, which I think is adequate, you're still looking at, if it goes back to DEP, they still have 90 days to deem it administratively complete, and the entire system starts over again. So considering the fact that you're just making modifications to the drainage and not all the limits of disturbance and the entire project is changing, realistically, you're probably looking at if it goes back to DEP, 4 to 6 months of re-permitting, administrative completeness, and then it goes into technical review, and they will have comments. You know they will, because they always do.
It's a possibility, yeah.
And then there's gonna be some round of revisions, and then a resubmittal. So in my professional side of it, I just want you guys to understand that you could be looking at minimum 4 to 6 months if it goes back to DEP. Not to-
We're anticipating worst case, and that would be January, right?
What's that?
We're anticipating worst case, and that's January. August, September, October, November, December, January. 6
I would
months,
say March.
right? The 6 months is January, which is January.
That's assuming it starts tomorrow. Yeah, and I'm not trying to
So,
put anybody down, because people.
but that's part of the reason why we're having this special meeting tonight.
Yeah,
We didn't
I just-
wait.
I think
We wanted
everybody
move
needs to
that As soon
understand.
as possible, yeah. So the reality for track is, to answer that question, bring it full circle. Is there a chance we'll have this done for track season? Yes. Is there a chance that we will not? Yes. We've been talking with Kutztown already. Is there a chance that we, because of games and schedules, we still do all the meets at Kutztown, but the track gets done? And so then we can convert and start having practices at home for the majority of the season. I think that's going to be the reality. I think that's going to happen. I think that's your mistake.
When is track season? March. Okay. Yeah, I would give it a slim chance that it would be complete, but that's the pessimist in me, because we deal with the all the time too.
Glass half empty, man.
I'm just trying to make sure everybody understands what, the potential impact of this. I don't
What
want
is-
people to
what-
get their hopes up.
What is the time delay, what we experienced with Arcatera for the third time of evaluating his plan? What is it that they have so many plans to review?
He was the original guy?
Yeah.
Or
Yes.
Yeah.
that got kicked out?
No, he didn't get kicked out. No, he's the one that designed this entire project.
Oh, that wasn't the
You're
other
thinking
one.
he said, no,
Okay.
you're thinking, yeah, the first one.
We experienced 3 iterations to get it to the point where he was designing for grass.
Yep.
Now, I'm hearing the same timeframe that you're predicting there could be happening for this too. But, excuse my,
No,
we're talking about a separate part. We're talking about the infield there, the track stands alone.
Yep.
What would stop them? Why would it take them just as long, 3 more times to get to that time frame that you're talking about there? Is it that they have too many permits to review? Are they understaffed? Can we have political push to get it done? Tell us,
it's all the above.
all of the above.
It's all of the above.
Well, that's a shame.
So on a project of this scale or any, a project that's a quarter this size has to go through the same permitting. Once you get to the DEP level with a NEPA's permit, you have to go through the same level of permitting that you have to do on an entire school build of 50 or 60 acres. It's just a larger project, but the permitting is the same throughout. So the way it works is you submit for administrative completeness, which I think Andrew had up on one of the first slides. You had a bunch of dates where you were talking about, we received approval for this, and then you didn't understand why it took so long. Your administrative completeness is the first step in DEP. That's basically me giving you to say, here's what we want to do. They go through with a broad brushstroke and say, yep, you're administratively, you've checked all the boxes, you've filled all the circles, you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's on the application. They give you thumbs up, you're approved for administrative completeness. Then your entire plan set, the full design, all the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty, goes into technical review, which is a whole nother round where they actually look at the stormwater calculations. They look at the flow analysis, they look at the piping, they look at every little piece of the design. They always will have comments. Send it back to the designer, you make those comments, you resubmit. They usually have another, I think, 60 days on a resubmittal
yeah.
to review it. They generally take 45 plus. They come back, potentially your review list, got to here, you got 3 or 4 more, you got to resubmit. Then they hopefully give you approval on the 3rd submittal, which is pretty normal. Then you get your NEPA's permit approval. The permit usually takes 4 to 6 weeks, I think, from approval stage to get the physical permit in your hand to say, okay, you can now move dirt.
Okay,
So understaffed, politically driven, and people don't know what they're doing out there. And there's too much work.
so it's a governmental agency is what you're telling me. Okay, now let me ask you this one last question, and I'll shut up. This is Berks County. Does this all happen the same way in Montgomery County or any other surrounding counties?
More or less.
Because I
It's not
think, this-
exactly the same, so we've gotten pretty good rapport and pretty good response from BCCD, Conservation District Healing. Lehigh is an abomination. Lehigh, my company's starting to not do work that touches Lehigh County Conservation because they are idiots. They don't know what they're doing. Monroe, Carbon, Northampton, they're all pretty good. They understand the DEP guidelines, the SOPs, the DEP, the government pushes down. It's, it's you understanding your mortgage and me understanding mine. It's a bank-based document that's 25 pages long. Berks County is gonna interpret it slightly different. Lehigh is gonna interpret it slightly different. But in general, Berks is usually pretty good.
or I would call them employees, are they political appointees?
No. No, but if you piss them off, your paper is gonna go to the bottom of the pile. As much as you don't wanna believe it,
Well, I believe it.
if you bug them too much, your paper's gonna go to the bottom, and they literally start at the top and they work down. They don't care that, oh, my friend has something here, this is my next project, I work through that, when that one's done, they put that one aside, then they go to the next one. But it is driven heavily by workload. Their workload is extreme, as his is, as these guys are, as mine is. Everybody that's doing work right now is extremely busy, and DEP's no different, to give them a break. The workload that we get from the Lehigh County rep and the state rep he said that they got work for months, years, piled up, just waiting to get through. There's just too much going on. And post-COVID, with so many people disappearing out of the workforce, everybody's just that much busier. They can't keep up.
Thank you, because what I want to say now to the public is, we've gone through this process once. If that process would have been speeded up, we probably would have had construction underway right now for what we're going to do, at least with the grass field. So now we may be heading for the same thing. So please, don't blame us. Don't blame our contractors. Blame the people in DEP in Berks County.
There
Call
is
your politicians, call the county commissioners, Mr. Linebach there, he said, hey, what the hell's going on here? Maybe you get some push, I don't know.
there is a silver lining though. So the first contractor that was hired was on that, because I was in on these meetings too. But, and you can probably attest to this, if there's a current Neptus on this property for this project, you have a permit in place. You can do all the initial dirt work and all the initial excavation that doesn't touch this redesign of the stormwater system. You can still do that work. That can start happening while the redesign and the amendment takes place. So you can have some overlap there. And I don't know the full design, so I don't know how much overlap there may be. But you are capable to start the work that doesn't or isn't affected by this amendment.
Okay, so wouldn't that include the track? Could we build the track then?
It could,
I don't know the full design, so I don't want to misspeak.
it could. The only thing that has me a little bit concerned is the pipes that you're talking about that separated, they would still be under the track. And I don't like that, to be honest with you. That's why if things go smoothly and we can wait, it'd be better to wait to put the new pipes in and eliminate the pipes that are going to be under the track.
Where are they going to drain to if they're not under the track?
There'll be a new pipe going in the infield to handle that drainage.
Well, we've come this far, so.
We can wait another 6 months.
I don't know, this has only been taking about 2.5 years.
Not even 3.5 years.
Any other questions for John?
No, not for John.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So with this second round of permit approvals, can you put a percentage likelihood that we would get rejected? So this notion that we start hoping that we,
You won't get rejected.
Probably zero. Yeah, you won't.
You won't get
delay but not reject.
That's
That you could also expedite this amendment too, just costs more money. Play the political game, if you pay them,
We talked about that already.
it's interesting how that works, but you could.
How much?
It's 3 times the application fee.
How much is that? Do we know?
I don't know.
Can we afford that?
I think we did talk about that. We did talk about it with David, and they said it wasn't going to make a difference.
You can look into expedited, typically what we've seen is that you have to pay a lot more money, so it's essentially bribery. But your review is probably 85% of what the normal review, meaning they're gonna miss some stuff. It happens, but you still get your permit. So some developers, that residential, commercial, whatever, when cost isn't a factor, when you're not dealing with public funds, they don't care, they'll pay the fees. But here, I don't know if it would necessarily be applicable, we're in the best interest.
Any more questions from the board?
Where is Mr. Horn? Are we still engaged with him?
So Mr. Horn is the one that designed this entire project, the layout of the field. He has got us to the point, he reviewed all of this. He's met with all of our partners here last week. He has full faith in them. He told us in the meeting with them, but also privately to me, we've made a great partnership selection here. He's worked with them in the past. At that meeting, he said, because we are in such good hands, he said he actually would like to elect to pull out of the contract because he doesn't want to use more of the district community funds for his services when he already feels that we're well taken care of and represented.
So what was the value of that contract and what percentage did he complete? So is he backing out on 10% or?
About 10%, I'd say, left over.
Yeah, I think
It was 19,000.
About 20 grand.
Any other questions?
I do have questions about the financials, so at some point I.
Yeah, let's address them. Yeah.
Okay, so I remember a community presentation, I think it was at the high school auditorium, where Mr. Horn did a whole analysis of grass versus turf.
Mhm.
And so I'm suffering a little bit from whiplash, frankly, because for 2 years, we've been hearing that we cannot afford turf.
Mhm.
Not that it wasn't desirable or that it wasn't appealing, but that we simply could not afford it.
Mhm.
And there was a whole cost analysis publicly presented. And we were down that path up until, at least from my perspective as a non-committee member, but still a decision maker here, until 11 days ago. On the 11th, when you emailed us an updated recommendation that all of a sudden said, we want turf. So help us that haven't participated in all of the nuts and bolts, try and wrap our heads around how all of a sudden, when historically it was unaffordable, how is it now affordable?
It's this slide right here. How did we get here? So we had budgeted for a grass field. When those bids came in super high, we still were going to have to move forward with a project. We overextended ourselves to pay for a grass field. I think Nicole summarized it absolutely perfectly. She said,
You have to go back another step with the other company when it came
Right.
back at $1 million, $5 million.
Right.
correct, yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's-
this one, come on, we were at $5 million, which is what caused us to go to this one, publicly bid it. The bids came in super high, so we were going to, what was originally bid and what the number was given to us of 2.4 million, we were going to extend ourselves to get to where we were going to go. When the DEP permits started happening and we were having delays and we got very nervous that they weren't going to actually go through, that's what made us start to have these conversations. And because the delta between a turf and what we were going to spend for grass anyways was so close, the recommendation switched to go back to what we originally wanted, which was the turf. And then we said we couldn't afford it because it went to the 5 million, and everyone else said it was going to be about $1 million more than what we had wanted or had budgeted to get there. So that's why we took that off the table and we went with the grass recommendation. But how we got here.
And another step there was to add an alternate or to have a separate bid for turf from Arcatera was gonna cost us another $70,000.
Correct.
To have two bid packets made, one designed for grass field, one designed for turf. So going into that conversation, knowing, hey, the last person under CoStarz was 5 million, to spend another 70,000 to throw, good money after bad didn't make any sense. So then we got to this point.
So conceptually, I understand
Mhm.
what you presented and what we've all sort of lived through. I guess mathematically, so the original pricing that we were provided through 18 months or 2 years of this process for grass ended up being beyond what what we were led to believe it would be.
Correct.
And then the most recent, this is really a question, is it true that the most recent numbers we've gotten from this set of partners, prospective partners, is more accurate or more based in reality, or so like what overinflated
It's a good question.
grass?
Yeah.
And what is now all of a sudden, if you will, allowing turf to come in only $300,000, $300,000 to $400,000 more than grass, where historically we've been led to believe that grass would be way cheaper than $300,000 or $400,000.
Correct. Yep. So it's a great question. And so the numbers we were given before and what we budgeted were exactly that, a budget. The architect said, this is based off of all our information. This is the budget. That number is what we went into the bid process using. So these numbers here that are in front of you here, though, are solid. Once you approve this tonight, they're locked in. There's no more speculation. These are the numbers for the project, down to 47 cents. So unless there's a change order or something happens, these are the numbers that are locked in for this project.
Even if there's 6 months worth of delays because of permitting and whatever.
Yes.
So how has our budget changed? Maybe that's the question I should be asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what was our initial budget 2 years ago? And then clearly we recognized that that might not be enough. We went through all these iterations. How does our original budget compare to this?
There's two factors. Go ahead. I know what you're going to say.
So I would say that the budget, when we initially started, I think it was 1.8. And then that was Keystone, and they said turf. But then that didn't pan out. We're getting costs, and then all of a sudden who's coming and presenting, now we're 3 million. And then that only had essentially just a turf, nothing else. And then, so we weren't getting that warm and fuzzy feeling from him, so we're like, all right, this isn't working. Kind of broke up with him, and we get Arcatera for the design build, essentially go out the bid process, under the impression of what he was for us, and it's about 2.5 million. For grass. And from my end, we had the bond money, about the 2.2, so we're like, okay, this is great, essentially, we have the money available. So then the bids came back 3.1. So regardless, essentially the construction committee, I had to come up with $3+ million somehow. So we have the bond money, the next thing is capital reserve dollars. So I basically had to take our 5-year capital reserve plan that we had intended, and basically figure out, okay, I need to reshuffle this, and I need to, something that we thought we could do this year is gonna be this year, but that we should still do this project. So there's a lot of shuffling happening on capital reserve, but that is essentially the one that you're at surplus, we continually fund, and then we do projects as they come along. So with that, I basically said, we can come up with that $3+ million via shuffling things around. And then some things, we went to the oil tank renewals at $100,000, and we were able to go to $55,000. So a lot of creativity over these last 6 months have been able to, find dollars from other areas within the capital reserve. So when it came up to, can you find 3.1 or 3.4? it was a lot easier to find the money. Like the $300,000 gap when you're just trying to find that additional amount of money wasn't as much of a hardship as you would.
Compared to $1 million.
Yeah, it's essentially like I was gonna have to find that money regardless because the track had to come from. So that's really.
And over the years, this has been 2 years, we've saved dollars otherwise too. You've been able to allocate funds, like going through the budget process, right?
Definitely. So there's really been a lot of small pieces that have really added up to this. But ideally it came down to, are we really $1 million?
And the other thing with the 2.8 number, two other factors, interest rates, because the interest rates were terrible before, and we have been able to get a lot of interest on that 2.8 million. And then the second thing is, as Nicole said, there's money that we've been able to put aside at the end of the year that we've been putting and feeding into this that have helped to grow that.
So I appreciate that. I think it's a really important point because nowhere yet, at least based on my paying attention, has that been made clear, right?
Well, that's what we
The
tried to
whole
put in here.
messaging was about the cost of grass versus the cost of turf. What I'm now hearing, which makes much more sense to me, is yes, there's a slight delta between grass and turf. We thought grass would be significantly cheaper. It's turning out not to be far less expensive than turf. Oh, and at the same time, we're tightening our belts, we're finding money, we're doing some creative solutions. We've identified pockets of cash that we feel, your recommendation is we feel comfortable spending on this project.
So
In terms of funding it, so it's not just about the cost of grass versus turf. It's, yeah, we found some money because our budget has gone from 1.8 million now to 3.5 million.
So you're right where we stand right now. It still comes back to the cost of grass and turf. And I do not believe we would be at this point with only this close of a delta if we wouldn't have went through the process we did. We would be at an $800,000 to $1 million delta between grass and turf, and we wouldn't be able to afford turf. But because we are at where we're at today, and the grass turf is still the issue, and it's so close that we can recommend this because it became so close, because of all the factors we just talked about.
Andrew and Nicole doing a fantastic job balancing that and, lack of better term, tightening the belt to say, hey, priorities here, priorities there. What can we move around? What can we shift? They've done a fantastic job making that affordable without a tax increase.
I think the other thing we have to keep you remember, we've eliminated some things from the overall plan.
Absolutely.
We were looking at expanding our seating and what have you, and we stopped doing that. We don't need it right away. Our bleachers at the field, whatever. We were gonna move some of those bleachers over to the other field. We're not doing that. There was other things.
Press box.
The press box, things like that,
That's still out,
There's
right?
there's still a future possibility. We're not saying it's never gonna happen, but we took them back to get it more affordable. But I think if you look at the second sheet on the handout tonight, I had a regular look at it. I'm not a financier, whatever you want to call it. But if you look at the summary of costs on there, you have the amount down there that totals up the total project to $3,484,047. Now, the financing is right below it. And you can see Mrs. Delgarigo has basically given us money to use from the construction fund and some from the capital reserve fund. And those two numbers are there. And when you add up those two numbers that she's taken from there, it balances out what we need for this project. And we still have money left over in the construction fund, and we still have money left over in the capital reserve fund. Am I right?
Yes.
So, all those things considered, we talked about the narrowing of the delta, as Mr. Potiker calls it, between grass and artificial turf. The things that we've eliminated temporarily, all those things have brought us to this point without a tax increase.
helpful. So, and I understand the numbers, like where's the money coming from? And we're pulling money, significant dollars from general fund, which is the equivalent of our savings account. For me, as a decision maker, it now makes the decision not about grass versus turf, which frankly, we've spent tons of months talking about and working out with the community. Now it's, do we want as a district to invest $3.5 million in this initiative to give 400 athletes access to this facility and our student population and our community access to this facility? So as a decision maker, that's where I'm now at, right? Because we could spend that $3.5 million lots of other ways. And so some of what I'm now struggling with, although this is super exciting, it positions us really well, and I think the team, you guys as committee members, have worked really hard through this process, and it sounds like we've landed on really good partners, which is fabulous. But now as a board member, I'm going, okay, we will have a beautiful backyard to the high school, and it will position us to do lots of really cool things. Counter that with, we have a teachers union contract that needs to be negotiated in the next 6 to 9 to 12 months. We have PSSA scores for our 8th graders, where 50% of our 8th grade students are below basic in math. And those kinds of data points say to me, wow, if we're gonna say yes to $3.5 million here, what is left for us to address some of the other things that I feel like this district should be prioritized?
So don't go. Exactly. Go ahead, Nicole.
Well, we could use the 1.2.
1.2.
There's the 1.2 we're pulling out of the savings account. I get that you can't use bond money that you borrowed for facilities for something else.
So all those things you mentioned, none of that can be used for those things. That 2.2 cannot be used for those things.
Correct, but the other 1 point.
But if your decision making is I'm having a hard time justifying $3.34 million to spend, you still have to spend 2.2, or we legally have to spend that.
I understand that.
And we can't spend it on all those things you just said.
Right, but we don't have to spend 3.5, we have to spend 2.2, which is what we borrowed in the name of facilities improvements,
Correct.
right? So yes, I get that we have to spend 2.2, we do not have to spend 3.5.
And we can't do a project for 2.2. We've
Right,
determined that. We can't do a project for grass for 2.2 or turf for
And we
2.2.
have to eliminate the track.
And we have to eliminate, if we don't do anything. And we still have to spend the money though.
And we've already approved the project. We're now ratifying or re-proposing, but we were at the last meeting going to approve Plow as our contractor,
Mhm.
right? So, but then the prices came in and that's what.
We
led the
readjusted.
evaluation. So we've already gone down and approved what this was going to look like. So.
I think the one part, going back to the capital reserve, I think I have to give, they're not even here, Mrs. Connect and Mr. Farina. So that 1.2, essentially that we are spending, like, to free up some of this money. So they wrote some spectacular PCCD grants, which that $450,000 that we're doing on security upgrades was essentially already in here. So essentially we freed up that money to give us more money toward this project. But kind of to your point is that money that was in capital reserve, we were able to free up and then put toward, our buildings and our programs. And then the one part about, the stadium for 400 athletes, it's really a community stadium. And that's the thing about Brandywine is where, if you look, we do want to have the movie nights, the parent-teacher organizations, the Ed Foundation, they're just getting started. Opportunities are endless for them as far as what they want to do with the stadium. So I think it's really for the taxpayers, whether you want to come in, you want to walk, or to do community events like the movie nights. So I think this really is for more than 400 athletes. But also, if you look, say, if I were a parent, there's not a lot of places for kids to hang out in Brandywine Area School District. So it's really opening that door to a safe environment for these kids to hang out and do things in the evening. So I think in that aspect, it is really affecting more than 400 kids. So
Bringing graduation home too, do you want us to do that? Bringing graduation home?
Yes.
Yep.
Mhm.
yeah, so there's a lot.
Go ahead, there was a.
Any other board questions before we move forward with any final community comment?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and my struggle is, while I value, you guys know, I fully support athletics, I fully support the community aspects. Our mission here is education. And so in the coming months and years, as this board and the community work together to drive curriculum, instruction, technology, all of those things, academic achievement, we are choosing, we are making a consequential choice here to invest in this. And my concern is that there's not going to be enough money left to do some of the mission critical things that a school district is required and expected to do by law, which is educate kids. And I get that there's peripheral education all the time in these things, but we keep saying, oh, no tax increase, because we found a way to creatively fund this. But next January and February and March, when we sit in budget workshop meetings and we try and fund the need creative, innovative programs that the administration is going to present to us, I really will struggle if people say, oh, well, yeah, we don't have money to afford that, so we're going to have to raise taxes for that. Do you see what I mean? It's like a pay me now or pay me later.
Two different things.
Two things can be true at the same time. So I hear you on the athletics. However, we've also taken a lot of steps on the academic part. The birth to pre-K program, that's going to take time. You're not going to see results in that instantly. The other things that we have invested in academically won't go away. We also have an education foundation that is chomping at the bit to help with initiatives. So there are pieces that are being put in place that I don't think that something we've already agreed for all intent and purposes is just being increased by 300,000. So to keep saying that we're making the decision to spend 3 million. Well, that decision really had already been made. Spending an additional 300,000 for a turf field doesn't mean that we're going to just hang up any academic portions just because we have a turf field. We're continuing to improve on test scores and those types of things. So I don't know it's necessarily a fair analysis to say because we did X, we're not going to do Y. So I think there's a lot of things that we're doing that are very good and very forward thinking that I think we have to give time to prove itself. It's my take on it.
I also think in the budget process, I mean, we're going to have incremental cost increases. That happens every year, thanks to inflation, thanks to, loaf of bread costing more, paper costing more, books costing more. So it's it's almost an unfair assessment to say when we don't have money for stuff in the spring. Every year we have this, and you could go back to every major spend that we've done with this school district. The addition that we did at elementary school, building the high school itself, all of those things you have to do as part of the process. This is an improvement, a capital improvement that we're doing, that we're using the correct type of money for the correct type of project. This isn't money that we're pulling out of our checking account, money that we're gonna, we couldn't use this money for everyday expenses, because we'd have to replace it.
3.5, let's be clear, when you say that, we can't use 2.2 or the 3.5 or
Correct.
anything with it.
Correct. So, but again, we need $300,000 more, right? So it's not a delta of 1.2, it's a delta of 350,000, right? That is going to be, and when we get to the spring, we get to our budget process, yes, there's going to be stuff we're going to have to look at, because the process of education is you have certain things that work and certain things that don't. And sometimes the stuff that worked 10 years ago doesn't work now. So we constantly have an influx of programs that are coming and going. It's not so much, I think we remember a time when we were cutting programs because we didn't have money, because there was a lot of things that were done that kind of left us in not the best position. This isn't along those lines, and I don't think that this is a decision like Ken would probably remember, of we're going to build a high school despite the fact that we have 60% capacity at a building, right? This is something that we need to do to increase the capacity. I'm talking about the high school project, right? So this is something that we need for like moving forward for a certain component of our program. And realistically, I think all of your colleagues are saying that we don't believe that it's going to adversely affect the education program at Green.
I'll take you back a little bit further in the high school.
Oh, man.
Not too far, but when I moved here 43 years ago, Brandywine was like the third lowest tax district in the county. Now we're the second highest and we're holding our own.
Third.
Third.
Muhlenberg now
Oh,
trumped
I'm
us.
sorry. Great, good news. Thank you. Congratulations. But-
You killed it! I was waiting for that! Oh, it's been my dream for 12 years as superintendent to get to that number. So let me take a moment here. We are stopping all momentum. We are now the third highest taxed school district in Berks County. Thank you to this board for stabilizing us over the course of the last 12 years. We've been about a 1.06% tax increase, which has allowed us to slowly dip to that. And we're not far from slipping down to like 4 or 5. So
Now let me go back.
well done.
Now we'll go
Thank you.
back.
I'm so excited for
All
that.
of a sudden, we built a high school that everybody, I think the Pell, who's it, Pell or whatever, they
Yeah,
said,
it was Pell.
you don't need that high school. That projection was, you're gonna go down to 1,400 kids. You're gonna go down to 1,200. Here we are. And in the meantime, when I came on the board with other people from the school district, known as the Brandywine Taxpayers Association, Mr. Sheets and I didn't see eye to eye on closing Long Swamp Elementary. Or Rockland. But we had Rockland my kids went to Rockland, okay? And at that time, there was well over 100 kids there. I think you might have even been one of the principals right, back and forth. And, it went down to less than 100 kids. Then I took a tour with Mr. Crummy, or temporary Dr. Crummy, and we went to Long Swamp, me and Carol, another new member. When I walked in there, I couldn't believe that half of two-thirds of the school rooms were filled with empty desks. There was less than 100 kids in that school. So we had looked at refurbishing that school. We had a lot of things we had to do. Rockland had a water problem. We had to get the water tested every month or so like that to make sure it was safe to drink for the kids. So we came to the conclusion, and Dr. Haber comes into the situation, and then he says, wait a minute, why do we need those two schools when you got excess capacity in this building? We were less than 50%.
Maybe I can make this story shorter. Ken, I voted for all of those. I was a board
No,
member since 2010 consecutively, so I know all that.
But they
Tell me
don't.
where you're going.
Not everybody else does,
Tell me
okay?
where you're
So
going.
what I'm getting at is, we bit the bullet. We closed down against all kinds of people. You can't turn down a little community school. I had a guy follow me in the men's room to bitch about it, okay? So what I'm saying is, we bit the bullet. We did the right thing. We closed those elementary schools. We brought them into the creative middle school there, okay? And now we've expanded the elementary school, so we have better capacity. All those things saved us millions and millions of dollars. So here we are tonight, and we're thinking about 300,000.
So question for you, Andrew. We celebrated the tax position, right, based on millage. Do you or anybody in the room know from a debt perspective, right? So one of the things I'm proud of, given the tenure on the board for the past 14 years, Ken, is the fact that we would have been totally debt-free as a district as of 2023 had we not borrowed this 17 million. But we did that in a way, and we did it at a time where interest money was so cheap. Super smart play. Our debt position will lapse in 31, 32.
Yes.
So one of the things I think about strategically is, 10-year warranty, 12-year warranty, maintenance plan for this stuff that we have to plan to in the long-term facilities plan to replace and repair and maintain. Do you envision a time when we will, instead of paying down that debt fully and being debt-free, do you envision that we would re-up that debt as a necessary funding source to continue to pay for some of this stuff on the go forward?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I do not think that we should earmark this for that. I believe that as a board, we should take the excess funds that we would have at the end of the year and slowly, incrementally put money aside each year and create a fund. And we'll talk about that when we get to the budget session this year. But that way we can create a pool of money. So when this does expire in 12 years, 15 years, we have a pool of money already set to offset that cost. It's planning for future generations. I think that's our fiscal responsibility to do so. To answer that question about the debt expiration, no, I believe there's going to be projects that will require us to evaluate doing some additional loans at that time. The high school at that point is going to be over 30 years old. You're going to have some system failures. You're going to have some other things that it could be demographic changes. It could be a whole bunch of host of things. But from a facilities perspective, at a minimum, we know that high school is going to be aging at that point. So I do believe it will require us to continue that. I would hope at that point that we also continue at that same level. So again, as long as we're keeping that same level, we're not causing a spike in what we have to pay out for our essentially mortgage payment. We're keeping it level. And so that will not require us to raise taxes to be able to afford that additional loans at that time.
And I suspect none of us have the answer to the question, how does our debt structure or picture compare to our peers in the county? Over time, maybe we could have some data on that. I want to believe, but I don't have the facts, but I have an intuition and some sense of vision on this, that we as Brandywine are positioned extremely well in terms of having low debt. And again, it's a pride point for the past 15 years, those of us who have been involved, we've been fiscally conservative while still doing the kinds of programs that Mike, you and John and Ken have talked about. So I feel good about that. I don't want this to have that impact. I think the most powerful thing, Mike, it might be what you said, which is, or maybe Alexis, this is a delta of what we've already approved by another 400K. So if we can find creative funding solutions for 400K, position the district to stay competitive with our peers in the county, many of whom have high school stadiums with lighting and video boards and a track and those kinds of things, then that's certainly a good thing. But I do want to caution us not to push this theme of we're doing all this with no tax increase. I don't think that's the right positioning. I think the positioning is we need to do it, or we want to do it, and we can afford to do it. Okay.
I mean, I kind of, and I'm sorry, I just want to make one last statement. I think this is kind of along the same lines as the one-on-one initiative, right? The initiative to get computers and iPads at all the kids, right? It has been brought to our attention that we are not meeting the standard of the vast majority of the other school districts in our area by not having this service available to our students. I think that it is similar, like I said, in the fact that we are giving our students an advantage. We're giving them a place to have, that the kids are going to be able to utilize the field during school, during physical education. We don't have to worry about, maintaining or keeping the field in some sort of special way because you can only play on the grass so many times and the soccer team needs it. I do believe that this is one of those things that this will be like the intermediate school and this will be like the elementary school, addition. It's going to cause some consternation initially, but as things roll out over the next couple of years, I think that this is going to be a project that we're going to look back on and we're all going to be proud of what we brought to the community. That's it.
Any other questions from the board about this project?
No.
Any other questions from the community? Yes, ma'am.
I'm kind of all over here with some questions.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I understand. So a capital reserve is basically for facilities and whatnot. You don't use that money towards the educational end of,
That's correct.
okay.
Yep, it's set aside specifically for the purpose of improvements to the facility only.
What, do you know what the yearly maintenance is for, I mean, if we go turf and all, I mean, what are we saving from a manpower standpoint and all that kind of stuff? I mean, do they offset or like, I mean, if you're looking at 300,000 over 10 years, we spend 30,000 a year on,
So maintenance itself, it was anywhere from 30 to 40,000. Obviously, can fluctuate depending on the needs. And then also, we almost had a dedicated person to doing the field work. So essentially, obviously, we won't lose the cost of that person, but we'll be able to shift that person to take on other responsibilities, which ultimately, in turn, would save us from having to outsource that project or need. So essentially, there's not a cost savings on paper, but eventually it'll help us as projects arise.
years ago, when we first, I mean, I moved into the school district in 90 and I think you were a student teacher.
Yeah, I was.
My daughter, she's 40 now. So, at that point, there had been a track team. Yeah. And it went away. You know, field hockey, I mean, they started girls soccer. I mean, when I coached, we played in the spring. That got moved to the fall. So now you have girls soccer, boys soccer, potentially field hockey all playing in the fall. Is that correct?
It is. That is the challenge of
Right.
female sports right now.
So the turf field would not be used a whole lot for practices because of the three teams. Like how would that work out? Because I mean, if you're gonna play on turf, it's totally different than playing on
Right.
grass.
Yep. So we're gonna
You need to practice on turf in order to, the field is ball or whatever.
we'll have to look at field hockey, middle school field hockey, assuming that they would come back. Right now, we're in a partnership and kind of but assuming that we would use some of the spaces, and then boys and girls soccer. We're gonna have to be very creative in the use of the space for games as well as practices. There will be some time when practices are going to have to occur in some of those other locations. But we did create a schedule initially at the onset of this to say, here's how we could make it work. Does that mean every team's going to be able to practice at 2:30 right after school? No. But there is the ability from 2:30 to basically 8:30 at night because we have lights and we have the ability to use the space. That's a big chunk of that 6 hours of time that you can get a lot of, if it's just straight practices, to be able to flow people through to use the space.
My concern is, it seems like enrollment is, I mean,
Yeah.
my kids are 140, 160, I think, graduating classes, when my kids were in. Now it's getting down to, I mean, I was looking at the numbers today, and 85, 90, and some of the, in the lower grades, and the reality is, I mean, I know we're not gonna get a tax increase, you're not using a tax increase, but, the capital reserve down the, are you anticipating anything big in the next couple of years, or is this gonna be a gradual thing that's chipping away, so that, down the road, I mean, with the enrollment going down, it means, well, more older people living in the school district, who are on fixed incomes, who, have owned their homes for forever, and you don't want to see them losing their homes. Because,
Absolutely.
I mean, the taxes are already pretty, I'm there.
Yep.
They're already pretty high.
Yeah.
So, I just think, so far, I think, I like what you said, I know it's been smaller increases, but with, teachers, negotiations and all that stuff coming up, that worries me.
So you hit all the nails on the head. We do have declining enrollment. Through that part, we've worked through attrition with staff retired and reshuffled positions and to balance that out. We haven't had to lay anyone off, but we've been able to balance it out and still provide programs like we talked about. We added a birth to 5 liaison to work with the community. We have intervention specialists that work directly with students that are struggling, K-8, that were originally funded by COVID dollars but the board said, you know, we're going to continue to internally fund that to help our kids. We're starting an ag program this coming year. So we're still able to grow our programming, somewhat through attrition, somewhat through creative funding, through grants and things like that. That's piece one. The other element of what are those projects that are coming up and how do we buffer that? We do have a long range plan that we have. Right now it's a 6-year plan, five-year plan that rolls us through everything from macadam work that has to get done to major projects. The major projects are pretty much off the list. When you think major project, you think of like this space here, the addition that was done at the elementary school. That was kind of that initial slide where this was all part of a long-term purposeful strategic plan where we did that. Those dollars in that loan were used for that. So the rest of it is now more maintenance, and we're not anticipating any kind of massive multi-million dollar project coming up.
I think my concern is if enrollment's going down, we can't make more kids move into the.
Correct.
You know, and if there's no place to go, you can't afford to go anywhere at this point, you know, short of attrition. So, my concern is we're putting a lot of money into a track, but are we even sure we're gonna have a track team 5 years down the road?
You'd be only able to.
You know, that's a concern.
It absolutely is an aging community, and I think that's why the philosophy has been for the last decade is to just keep that really small incremental to buffer that cost of living that Mr. Sheets had talked about. We're just doing that about 1% a year. You know, that's fluctuated slightly, but that has enabled us to take into account knowing that I'm going to be wrong in this percentage, but I think 92% of those tax dollars come in from residents. And the primary within our top 10 taxpayers is residents. So we don't get a ton from the state, and we know that it falls on the back of the residents. So we're very, very conscientious of that. And we do that with balancing, still putting program in front of kids too.
And as far as enrollment numbers, we do have potential influx coming in with the development at Mountain Village.
Yeah.
So that theoretically is 120 trailers, so could potentially be 200 more students.
Which is good in terms of manning sports teams, but is a burden on the tax dollars.
I just meant as far as the
because-
enrollment is
Yeah.
theoretically could be going up in the next
Yeah.
2 years.
But there's no funding from property taxes coming with those 200 kids.
100%.
So that's spreading each dollar we have to spend across more kids, not fewer. Yeah. So it's a plus and a minus. Yay, we have more kids to field teams, but we also have more kids to educate.
Anyone else? Yes.
Can you go back to the slide that Mr. Reagan's had up, the 3-line charts? Yeah, that one. Where do we fall in the realm of schools, other schools in the area with, we're saying 54% of our kids are in athletics? Where is that in the realm of other schools? Are we middle of the road? Are we high? Are we low?
I don't have the data point to specifically say where we stand.
Okay.
I can say anecdotally, I believe that is extremely high.
Okay. 'Cause my thought, I mean, I heard what, I don't know your name, so I apologize. I heard what she was saying about the education side of things. And I mean, there's pluses and minuses, you know, but this woman is saying about the older community, I mean, it's a sine wave. As the older people eventually have to go, you're gonna get more people in with kids. But I think Mr. Reagan's hit it pretty good. When he mentioned about the feeling of enrollment and the pride and all the other feelings that kids have when they're involved in sports. And I see our numbers actively growing in sports. We're 271 to 358 or whatever that is.
339.
Our numbers included in sports or in athletics are going up. So I would like to think, I mean, I agree with this whole project. I'd like to think that we'll see some increase in the test scoring and overall pride in the school and math scores and English scores with kids getting more involved in sports and
this project, the way I see it, allows that. It creates this huge prided entity within the school district. It's like, that's our field. You know, that's a big deal. And I just see the two combining, and I think Mr. Reagan's hit it very well on the head with his hammer, with these numbers to say, you know, if those continue to climb, then we may see better test scores and better results because our kids will feel better about themselves because they're in track or they're in field hockey or whatever, you know, lacrosse, maybe we get that, some, you know, this field opens up a lot of avenues the way I see it.
And to your point, there's academic benchmarks that have to be met to be able to be an eligible athlete
Yeah.
to play. So that adds to that
Yeah.
level of.
I think this project is a great project and I see a lot of potential in other areas of education as a whole, whether it's athletic, mental, whatever, or academic. I just see this project potentially trampolining us into a very positive future.
It's actually proven,
Glass half full.
by the way. It's actually proven. There's
Phil,
like
just
actually
ask that
literature that
question.
supports student athletes perform better in the classroom than non-student athletes. That's actually a proven fact. It's not like a guesstimation where we think it might happen. There's like decades of research that supports people that perform in athletics as students perform better in the classroom.
And young families might want to move here because we're only one of 3, if you count Antietam, that don't have facilities like this.
That was gonna be one of my other just questions, like, are we gonna be a potential leader in the quality of what these guys are gonna build and give us? We're gonna be towards the top of, wow, look at that field versus Muhlenberg versus Fleetwood versus Ole versus all the other surroundings.
We're going to be late jumping to it. We're going to have a very, like, it was mentioned, we're going to have the best quality that Shaw
So we're late to
offers.
the game, but we're coming in with 3 aces
Quality.
in our hand right off the bat.
I appreciate that. I do want to make one quick comment on that 3 dotted trend that Mr. Riggins talked about. Again, a huge buy point for those of us who have been part of sort of the drive to help develop the athletic program here at Brandywine. It's not just facilities.
Mhm.
So the more people participate, they're gonna take advantage of all this good stuff we're gonna vote on tonight. But with it, you also have to fund professional development for coaches, leadership opportunities for student athletes, all of that kind of stuff. And the pride factor, I remember doing work with Mr. Volker when he was here on a community-wide committee where we prioritize building pride in Brandywine. How do we get people to attend the sporting events? Not just kids play, but how do we get community members to come out and cheer? How do we create like a Friday Night Lights kind of vibe in the community? But I want to
Create a logo that was
Yeah.
never there before, right?
Yeah, I want to give props to the administration and the athletic leadership that's been here over maybe the past 6 or 7 years. And Mr. Riggins, you've got big shoes to fill in terms of, but what a great opportunity for you to lead the charge with a state-of-the-art facility in this, like you said, this little tiny community. How do we drive that number from 54% to 64%? And I would agree with Mr. Potter's comment. I think 54% is very strong. I don't think you'll see that kind of participation number at bigger schools, obviously, but like-sized schools, I think we're doing really well there.
Any other questions? Any other questions? If I could just take one last moment before I turn it back over to you, Mr. Wagaman. I mentioned earlier in my opening comments, but this committee, Mrs. Eisenhart, Mr. Wagaman, Mr. Hefner, Mr. Hohenschelt, I can't even begin to count the number of hours they put into this. They've taken time out of their schedule. They've taken off of work to be part of these meetings for the last year and a half. They've weathered a lot of storms. They've weathered a lot of comments, emails, and they've really worked to get to this where we are today. So I want to publicly thank them because so often committee work like that, you get on a committee and you do it, but you don't quite understand the impact of what they have done. And so we're able to put this project in front of you. And I truly believe it's going to be the best opportunity for our district, for our community and most importantly for our students moving forward. So thank you to all four of you for weathering this storm with us to get to here where we are today. So Mr. Wagaman, I'll turn it back to you.
Likewise to you and Nicole for continuing to dig to get us to this point, so. All right, could I get a motion and a second for the board of directors report?
So move Sheets.
Second, Eisenman.
That is theoretically the longest it's ever taken us to get to the board of directors report.
Took a while.
All right, so do we have any questions, concerns over any of the items that we've just went over? Hearing none, can I get a roll call?
Are we doing a consensus agenda? Like not item by item, we're doing the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay.
All those numbers were in the presentation already.
Mrs. Eisner?
Yes.
Mr. Hefner?
Yes.
Mr. Honchuk?
Yes.
Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Reinhardt?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Subitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Walliser?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
9 yeas, motion passes.
All right, is there any additional public comment or board comment? Yes.
Of course, you know what I'm gonna ask. So now that this passes and we have now entered a co-op for Kutztown, I believe a co-op lasts 2 years, how will this in turn affect our field hockey team?
So I do believe that the co-op is still a very important part of the sustainability of a field hockey program for both school districts. I want to still see that thrive. I think now the next step is we have a really cool opportunity at Kutztown University. How do we continue fostering that? We now have an opportunity for field time that never existed before. And so now it's going to be a little bit of, we'll get through this field hockey season this fall and work through what does this look like. And there's a host of options. Obviously, you can probably start formulating what that could look like. Does it come back here? Does it stay there? Do we use this for games? Do we use this for just practice it? There's a host of iterations that can come into play, but this now creates a phenomenal opportunity for usage and for space that we now can work through that process together. But I want to make sure I'm clear. Like, I think it's still important that we stay together through that process. It's just a matter of where does it land and how does it look is going to be the next step.
Yeah, we're not locked into the way it looks.
No, I anticipated that there might be some changes in the future. It's just that we made those decisions based on no turf and low numbers. So we felt like we were pushed in that direction. So here we are. And now we have this brand new opportunity at our home school. It would be really wonderful if it had flip-flopped and we would have stayed brand new.
Agreed. We're still gonna have a year
No, and I.
buffer, so.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate, I just want the conversation to continue. That's why I'm asking, because for our girls and our team, I want the conversation to continue, because if we have a wonderful new field here, I just want the opportunity to be able to, for our girls and our team to use it.
100%. Anyone else? Any board discussion? I do need to announce that we have an executive session after the meeting in regards to personnel.
Just thank you to everybody that came out this evening for your interest, for your willingness to be part of this process. I really appreciate that. A lot of you have been with us for the 2 years we've got here. So thank you. And board, thank you for everything you've done to get us here too.
Thank you, everyone.
On that bottom.